I did finish The Demon Awakens by R.A. Salvatore, book 1 in his Demon Wars saga. This is kind of a mixed bag for me. I think there's a lot of things to like here. I think there are lots of throwbacks to some other series that I do enjoy. Now, you got to understand, guys, this came before some of these series I'm going to mention. So obviously, anytime you have a magic system of any sort that's above, hey, I'm a wizard and I can do magic, this deals with, basically magic stones, I guess, that kind of rain from the sky and give the user special abilities, each one having a different power. It's going to get a lot of people to mention Mistborn. I mean, anytime you have any kind of expanded magic system, everyone now goes to Brandon Sanderson because he's so good at it. So I would say that, yes, how you have the each user using a different stone will give them a different ability. I see you can see that as like Mistborn in many ways. I get a lot of Pillars of the Earth actually out of this because there is a character that's Avalon that deals with, kind of a corrupt monastery, and that kind of makes me think of a lot of things that Prior Philip kind of deals with in Pillars of the Earth, but it isn't quite like that R-rated. This, I would say, is it's kind of in between PG-13 R. Like if you've read any other Salvatore, his stuff is very family friendly and all ages can kind of get into it. This deals with a lot of things that I would say is, I put this on the adult fantasy range. Now, there's not a lot of bad language or anything like that. There's a lot of content and violence and sexual abuse, I think. Obviously, that will raise those flags. Be like, just know your reader whenever they kind of pick that up. But I think what I did like about this, I like the world he's created. I like the magic. I kind of like the coming of age stories because you get 3 of them here. I think that Jill's story is really good. She really is one of those kind of characters. Kind of made me think of Vivenna from Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson, that she really just kind of goes through the shit and you just kind of keep rooting for her until she does finally find her way and just kind of keeps overcoming those odds. So really just a character just kind of gets just beat up constantly. You just find yourself rooting for them. I loved Avalon. I thought Avalon was a spectacular character. That's a character that I really just could not get enough of. When I turned the page and saw it was one of his chapters, I was very excited because the stuff in the monastery, really good. The stuff outside the monastery, even better. I think the second half of this book, his character is just terrific. I love the journey that he takes. Now, when you go to ℙ𝕦𝕤𝕤, the main character, I'm kind of mixed on him. He kind of makes me, I'm trying to keep making the Brandon Sanderson comparisons here. It kind of makes me think of Wax from the era 2 of Mistborn, and that he's just kind of boring. He's kind of dull. He's a goody two-shoes. He's always really, really good at just about everything. He does struggle a little bit, but I got a lot of Tad Williams vibes out of this as well. Because I think it's in book 2, Stone of Farewell, in the Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, you have your character Simon, where he's kind of he's this place where he's not a prisoner, but he cannot leave. You get a lot of that with ℙ𝕦𝕤𝕤 in this. So again, lots of things I feel familiar with because you are dealing with traditional fantasy, but I do feel like it is very fresh in its own right. I never feel like, hey, this is just like that. Now, some things that I will say I didn't like very much, it's kind of predictable, guys. I mean, it is 90s fantasy. It is traditional fantasy. Might be a little bit more adult than you would expect for that, but it is very, very predictable. It isn't going to be anything where you're like, I've never seen that kind of trope before. The farm boy leaves home, the Dark Lord, all that stuff is here, but it does feel very fresh in its own right. So this isn't Salvatore being like, hey, I'm going to reinvent the wheel, but it does feel like something that will be familiar to anybody who's kind of read it. Also, the way I put it was, I feel like I like the series enough to continue, but I'm not anxious to continue. Does that make sense? Because I feel like book 1 here, it could be treated as a standalone if you want it to. For me, it was like I said, there was these group of characters that I liked most of them, and let's just say one of them probably won't be around the rest of the series, and that's kind of a bummer. Now, these things happen, obviously, in fantasy, and that's fine. You can keep going on. I just feel like you kind of took the heart out of your story by doing that. And I'm not really on board with that decision. Also, it did not need to be almost 700 pages. This story that it tells, I don't feel like it drags or anything. It can be glacial at times. I never feel like it drags where I wanted to put the book down, because I did read it in like 3 days, guys. But it definitely could have been much shorter. Now, I don't know if that's just because, he was trying to get away from Drizzt, which are always really quick stories, or what. He was trying to do something different. It just, again, it did not need to be that long. Now, that might be me, guys. I'm going through my thing right now, where anything over like 500 pages is like, get back, demon, for me right now. I'm just kind of burned out on that, but I did not think it needed to be that long. So, again, I give the book a recommend. I say check it out, but it's just one of those where I'm going to say, If you like traditional fantasy, cool. If you don't really like traditional fantasy, it's not going to be anything that I think is going to sell you on that, especially with 90s fantasy. But I do like a lot of the things that he did there. Just some of the decisions that he made in the third act, it just doesn't really have me excited to pick up book 2, which is Demon Spirit. But I will eventually. But it isn't going to be like in July or anything like that. So that's kind of where I stand with it. I'm glad that I read it, but it is a very mixed reception.